Hi everybody, it is Gemma from Grow Your Mindset. I'm super excited today because for our Mindset and You interview, I've got the lovely Adrian Bethune with us, who I met online ages ago through LinkedIn, but then since then, I've read his book as well, excellent book, Wellbeing in the Classroom, and he's going to have a chat with us today about mindset. So I'm not going to say too much more because I'm going to let Adrian introduce himself. So introduce yourself, Adrian. Tell us about where you're up to at the moment, what's your current role, and who are you?
So I'm Adrian Bethune. I'm a primary school teacher, teach part-time now. This is my 10th year of teaching. I'm also a governor, the lead wellbeing governor at the school that I teach in. As you said, I'm an author, wrote the book Wellbeing in the Primary Classroom, and I've just finished co-writing a second book called A Little Guide to Teacher Wellbeing and Self-Care with Dr. Emma Kell, who's another teacher. And yeah, 3 years ago, because I got a LinkedIn reminder reminding me, I set up Teachappy, which is me working as a freelancer, going into schools, training staff, working with children about the best ways of developing their own wellbeing, but also the wellbeing of the people around them. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
So you said you've been teaching for 10 years. So what came before that? And then how have you sort of got where you are from going from being a teacher full time and then actually 1 day a week that it is now? So what's been the journey there?
So before I got into teaching, I worked in the music industry, in music publishing. And yeah, it was in my late 20s. I'd just bought my first flat. Everything on paper was really rosy and heading in the right direction. And then, things just started to kind of unravel for me, and I started to feel a bit anxious, and in a way that I hadn't felt. I'd experienced anxiety before when there were like nerve-wracking things to do, but this was like a bubbling anxiety that just wasn't going away. It was linked to the flat. Like I suddenly felt like this massive pressure of having a mortgage. It was 2008, so the global world financial crisis had kicked in. And yeah, just there were kind of couple of significant relationships that kind of broke down at that time in my life. And yeah, it went into acute anxiety that led to a bout of depression. And, you know, as someone that had worked really hard at school, university, I do remember thinking at the time, like, I have all of these qualifications, all of this knowledge, but I had no idea how to help myself get better or feel better. And then kind of went on this journey of like helping myself get better and also trying to understand what was happening to me. So I went to see a counsellor on the recommendation of a friend. I started to read about anxiety and depression, the causes, and basically learned a whole load of stuff that one, massively helped me, and two, I wish I'd known about earlier in life, because I also think it could have helped me not, you know, with anxiety and depression, just general like life skills. And I also realized there was a whole science of well-being. So not just how do we help people with anxiety and depression, but actually how do we help people just lead well-rounded, fulfilling lives. And then part of my research showed that people that volunteer, some of the happiest people. So I volunteered with a charity called Chance UK and mentored a boy for a year. There was a boy living in Hackney. He was being taught in a pupil behavioural unit, so he's at risk of being kicked out of mainstream school. And also volunteered to be a governor at my local school, where a really good friend from uni was a teacher, primary school teacher. Anyway, those two things just made me reflect that, you know, I was getting way more out of the mentoring and the school governing than I was my job in the music industry. So I decided to retrain in 2010. And with this vision of focusing on children's well-being as well as teaching them the national curriculum. And the reality just didn't live up to my aims and visions. And I, several times considered dropping out in my first year of teaching. I just thought it's too stressful. It's too intense on the children. It's all about
Yeah.
progress, next steps.
Yeah.
And a couple of really lucky things happened. A friend on my teacher training course lent me a book called Teaching Happiness and Wellbeing in Schools by a teacher called Ian Morris. He was a secondary school teacher, but I started to kind of read the book and apply some of the ideas in my classroom. And then I was watching telly in the Easter holidays, and I saw the launch of a charity called Action for Happiness. And I went along to the launch, and Sir Anthony Selden, who at the time was headmaster of a school called Wellington College, which is actually where Ian Morris teaches, was basically just saying our school system is sick, schools are becoming exam factories, we need to focus on the well-being of children and teachers in order to foster better learners, but also a happier society.
Yeah.
And all of these things were like, yes, like this is why I got into teaching. So I just started to make some tweaks and focus on well-being just in my classroom. Just introduced a few little ideas, one of which was just like a mindfulness meditation practice in the morning. I'd read about growth mindset in Morris's book and started to introduce some of those ideas. And yeah, it just kind of spread from there. Head teacher liked what I was doing in class, asked me to do a staff training in school, which I did. Just went on other courses about positive psychology, read more books. And just started to just apply the ideas in my school, spread them among the teachers, did workshops for parents. That's how it began.
But you know, it's interesting how you say that those skills that you learn about anxiety and depression and all that knowledge came when you were in a job, when you had a flat, and you know you were being the adult, and you wish those would have come sooner. And that's exactly what you know, me and Liz are trying to do as well. That we sometimes forget those bits, those life skills, don't we? That actually it's not just about all the academics, that it is about building the life skills as soon as possible so that our children can thrive as they get older, and they do get a mortgage and a flat and all the rest of it. And that, very similar to you, that's what sort of felt like or feels like is missing a little bit in education. That it needs that strong person to go, no, this is what our school is, this is what's important to us, and your head teacher noticing that actually these things are working in your classroom, and let's take them forward. That's really interesting. So in terms of you've obviously, your wellbeing in the primary classroom covers a whole range of different things that we can try in our classroom, and what I've liked about it is they are some like pick up and literally run with it. It's simple things that maybe we haven't really thought about the impact of them, like your mindfulness sessions and things like that. But if we think about the chapter where you focused on mindset, how do you think that sort of impacted on you, finding out that knowledge of mindset and developing mindset in the classroom? How's that impacted on you personally and professionally, do you think?
I think personally it's helped me, well, and professionally as well, it's helped me like know how to approach scary things, and understand that whenever you learn something new or are in a new situation, whatever, you are going to feel and experience some kind of fear, some thoughts of kind of self-doubt. You might get, which I definitely got during writing the book, like imposter syndrome. So just kind of negative thoughts like, you're not qualified to write this book, who are you to be an expert and talk on a, you know, give a keynote talk, all of those kind of things. And yeah, I have learned as an adult that every time that you kind of grow by doing challenging things, by doing things that are new, there's going to be uncomfortable thoughts and feelings that accompany that. And when you learn how to manage them and handle them, it's not that the fear goes away, but it lessens, and you actually just get used to it. So if I'm about to give a keynote talk and there's a room full of, you know, a couple hundred people, to understand, these nerves are here, this is all part of the process. Whereas I think as a younger adult and even as a child, those nerves, those anxious feelings and stuff, they would make me want to avoid situations, and sometimes I would. Whereas an adult, I'm learning just to approach things, particularly if it's things I really want to do. There were things as a kid I really wanted to do, but if it was too scary, I just wouldn't do it.
And sometimes as parents as well, when we're dealing with young children who are frightened of something or scared about doing something new, sometimes we withdraw that opportunity from them as well, don't we?
There's a book I love called Happier by a psychologist called Tal Ben-Shahar, and I quote this section in my book, and he talks about struggle, and that he says that parents and even teachers, in wanting to protect their children, in wanting them to be happy, they sometimes take struggle away and think, actually, if we make things nice and easy and smooth, then that's how we can look after our kids best. And he says, actually, we deny them amazing opportunities to overcome challenges, which builds up their confidence, builds up their levels of well-being, because going ahead into adult life, you're going to come across loads of difficulties, and you need that resilience, those inner resources. And the other thing, as a professional teacher, like, you become aware of the limits that you place on certain classes or certain children, and even parents, like, you become aware of the mental conversations you have, and where you are limiting certain people by the thoughts and beliefs that you hold. And so you can let go of them. It's only by being aware of the thoughts and mental process you're going through can you then do something about it. Otherwise, it's all unconscious. Just not putting limits on children. Not at the beginning of my career, I would have definitely said, that group, they're going to struggle with this, or that child is not going to get there, or that child, if I give him this line in the school play, he's going to really panic. And you're just limiting children the whole time. And I think mindset work has really opened up my eyes to the limits not only I place on myself, but other people. And
absolutely
manage that more effectively.
That's brilliant. And then, we impact on mindset all the time, whether we like it or not, but the messages that we give are either going to promote more of a fixed mindset, or they're going to promote more of a growth mindset. And obviously, we're trying to work as hard as we can to promote that growth orientated mindset in a classroom. So why do you think that is so important, especially now? But in the world of education, why is developing more of a growth orientated approach what teachers and schools should be focusing on?
There's a chapter in my book called How Our Thoughts Shape Our World, and it completely links to the other chapter on growth mindset, because essentially the stories we tell ourselves, the thoughts we have, the way we explain our lives and our experiences, they literally shape our world. They shape what we can do, what we can't do, what we believe we can achieve, and what we can't achieve. And if we want children to continue to learn and to grow, we need them to believe that is possible for them. If children have fixed ideas about what they are capable of doing, it will become a self-fulfilling prophecy where they believe they can or can't do something, and they end up proving themselves right, because that's essentially how human behavior works. Do we want children to believe that they can only do a certain amount of things, in which case they're going to give up when they face barriers, and it's going to limit their potential? We want all children to believe that they can improve essentially at anything. Growth mindset is not about teaching children that they can all be Lionel Messi's or Beethoven's or Michelle Obama's or Beyonce's, that at the absolute top of their game, but it is about everybody can improve at the things that they want to improve at. And it's through that continual growth and improvement that it fosters even more so a growth mindset, and you start to apply it to other areas of your life. So, you know, you can have, as you well know, you can have a growth mindset in one area of your life and a fixed mindset in another. And it's about trying to apply that growth mindset to as many areas of your life as possible. Yeah, so it's fun. It's absolutely fundamental to learning, having a growth mindset, because a fixed mindset limits what you can learn, essentially.
Yeah,
You know?
and ultimately, like you say, those thoughts that you have, if we're having a much more positive inner dialogue with ourselves, surely that's then having a positive impact on our well-being as well, isn't it?
Yeah, there's, just on that point, there's a lot of research around positive emotions and their importance, particularly by a professor called Barbara Fredrickson. And what she's found, she developed this broaden and build theory, which is that when we experience positive emotions, we broaden our horizons. So literally we see more, we take in more information, we become more flexible with our thinking, we become better at problem solving. These are all fundamental skills in order to learn. And then we also build like social capital. We tend to get on better with other people, we build our relationships. So yeah, growth mindset, having that positive outlook, that positive self-concept, self-esteem, is really important for experiencing positive emotions in your life, but also in the classroom. And these help you, think better, learn more. So these are, fundamental skills for the classroom.
Yeah. So have you got sort of like a ta-da moment where something's, you know, you've been promoting mindset development, growth mindset, and there's either been a child or an individual that has really had a bit of a light bulb moment? Has anything ever happened like that to you before?
Yeah, do you know what? When I read that question, I immediately thought of examples from the classroom, but which I can share. But I also thought about me teaching my son how to learn to ride his bike during lockdown.
Okay.
Because that's so recent and current for me right now. So my son had a balance bike for, I don't know, a year or so. So those bikes without pedals where you just push along and
great fun.
Yeah, getting that centre of balance. So then during lockdown, it's far too small for him. So we bought him a pedal bike because we thought, whilst we're at home, let's try and use our time wisely. And basically, I've been trying to foster a growth mindset in terms of my son learning to ride the bike. And, you know, he's gotten really frustrated in the process because he wants to be able to do it straight away. And I've just been, and at times he's wanted to give up. Like, lovely brand new shiny bike, which he was in love with and literally didn't want to let out of his sight. And then the other day he was kicking its front tire saying stupid bike because he couldn't master it. But, you know, from my experience, growth mindset and promoting mindset is less about kind of light bulb and ta-da moments that's happened, but it's more about just real small incremental changes. And that's partly because you have to constantly drip feed the messages and reinforce them. So I've been saying to Eli, my son, like literally every minute that you are learning, that you're practicing riding your bike, your brain is learning how to do it better, so that the next day we come out, you will be riding your bike slightly better than you did the day before. And it has been quite a slow journey, but it's also about like pointing out to him the small improvements that he's made. So like the other day, it was like, oh, Eli, do you remember yesterday? Like we were doing laps around this park. You had to stop like 3 or 4 times. Like we've just done a whole lap and you haven't stopped once.
Yeah.
It's like pointing out the small improvements that he might not have noticed before. It's about breaking down the complex task of riding a bike to, today we're just going to practice you gliding along and putting your feet on the pedals. And then we kind of practice that for that session. And then the next day, okay, we're going to practice steering. I'd set up like little obstacles for him to kind of go around just to like zigzagging out of.
Yeah.
Next day it was like brakes. Like, and that to me is well, it's some of the strategies I use in the classroom.
Mm.
And because of that, it is a long process,
Mm.
but the progress is really real and it's really visible, particularly when you break stuff down and you just think, like, let's just try and master this small component of riding the bike. And it's kind of like, okay, we've done that. Now we can move on to this. And you just build up from there. And like the other day, we went out for a family bike ride. And like literally he can now push himself off by himself. I don't have to push him along. He can use his brakes going downhill. He can stop when he wants to and carry on. He can move out the way if another cyclist is coming. And like he said to me, like my wife Sam said, "Oh, Eli, your bike riding it's gotten so good," because she hasn't seen him ride for a few days. And he's like, "Mummy, it's because I've been doing so much practice."
Oh.
And it's like he's now, I think, genuinely like internalizing the messages that I've been drip feeding. And this is essentially like how you mold a growth mindset. It's carefully choosing your words. It's about the phrase that you give and how you give it. It's about the feedback you give. It's about the messages. It's about modeling it. We'll come on to this a bit later, but you know, me as I'm cycling next to him, telling him about how it was when I was a boy trying to learn how to ride the bike and my frustrations. So that to me is the most recent growth mindset example.
And with that question, in some ways it's a little bit of a trick question, because I always stick in the ta-da just to see what people will say. And this sort of leads into my next question, really, because that is a real common misconception, that you're going to do this growth mindset stuff in your classroom or with your children at home, and you know, in a couple of weeks we're going to have fixed the mindset of our children, and it's not that at all. It is a journey, isn't it? It's a real process, and like you say, it can take a long time, just, you know, for one thing to stick, like with riding your bike. And it's just that continuous journey. Okay, we've mastered the bike, what's next? What are we going to do now? It's a continuous journey, and I think that's where my next question sort of comes in, really, because growth mindset has, or Carol Dweck's research, I should say, has had a bit of a bad press in terms of it doesn't work, or it's namby-pamby, or whatever it is. Why do you think that is, and what would you say now, reflecting upon that?
Yeah, I think in the past, her research has been oversold, as in it's been in some quarters kind of given as a quick fix, like just tell children it's about effort, just tell children, praise them for their hard work, and then that's how you develop a growth mindset. And like, I'll admit, right in the early days when I read about growth mindset, you know, I was sold on that quick fix idea, that's all you have to say, just have to praise them for their effort and their persistence, and then that's it. But I think one of the reasons is a lot of people have not actually read, one, Carol Dweck's book Mindset, two, read some of the research around growth mindset. Like, my first introduction to growth mindset was an article about growth mindset, and it was an article in a magazine, and it completely oversold it and oversimplified it. So I think there's a bit of a pushback on it because it has been oversold. I compare it to mindfulness. I'm a big advocate of mindfulness, and sometimes mindfulness is oversold and oversimplified. And mindfulness and growth mindset are slow burning, gradual trainings, essentially. It's not I did an 8-week course in mindfulness right at the beginning, but it doesn't mean that's it. Oh, I'm mindful now. You have to practice daily. And it's the same with growth mindset. When you notice you're in a situation where you're having fixed thoughts or beliefs about situations, it's about challenging them. It's about, you know, understanding your mindset in different situations. I also think education typically in the past has been full of fads. So things come in, they become very popular. maybe a change of government happens and then that's no longer popular anymore. But yeah, like I said with the example of my son, my mindset takes time. It's about continuous reinforcement. And actually the gains from the research, the gains are small, but in educational terms, they're significant. And this is why people like Professor Dylan William, who I've interviewed on my website and I've read articles when he's talked about growth mindset, it's like it's a low cost intervention. It's the gains are small, but over a course of a lifetime in education, they're really significant. So why would you not kind of apply growth mindset ideas in your classroom? And I just think there's a lot of misunderstanding about what it is, and people need to know more about it.
And she's constantly revising her original research, isn't she, by, you know, exploring it deeper or updating it. So it is sort of like keeping on top of what else she's finding out and discovering as well. So if somebody was to say, okay, this sounds great, this sounds just like what I want to do in my classroom, I want to encourage growth mindset in my classroom, and apart from obviously having us in, of course, to discuss it with them, what would your top 5 tips be to someone wanting to develop growth mindset?
I would say the first thing is to read about it, understand what it is, understand what it isn't. Read Carol Dweck's book, which is really easy to read. Read also the research that she's done. There are, like, you don't have to be an academic to read at least the summaries of some of the papers, but read the papers that show that it can work and be effective, but also read the ones that show that it isn't, because, you know, you need to be balanced, and you can learn from what doesn't work as well as what does work. I'd say once you have a good understanding, start to implement some of the ideas in your classroom on a small scale, and accept that it's going to take time and that you're not going to see dramatic changes overnight. But what I mean when I say on a small scale, don't just think, right, growth mindset, going to do it on a whole school, like immediately straight away. So the next step is, once, let's say you are kind of really keen on growth mindset and the ideas and you're applying it in your classroom, the next step after that, I would say, is share the ideas in your staff room, like train other teachers, and then also hold workshops for parents. That was one thing I've done in my last couple of schools, is hold workshops, because it's really important. If teachers in schools are reinforcing messages to develop a growth mindset, it can be either reinforced at home or it can be completely undone at home. So it's important that everyone's singing from the same hymn sheet. Number 4, I'd say, is to model a growth mindset. It's really important as teachers, teaching assistants, head teachers, educators, parents, that we show to our children that, you know, we can embrace our mistakes, that we are challenging ourselves, that we're continually learning and growing and trying to get better at stuff. So we need to model it. We can't expect them to exhibit a growth mindset if we're staying safely in our comfort zones, not trying anything new. And the last thing I would say is I think it's really good to have role models that bring growth mindset to life. So you can kind of spotlight on particular people that maybe children look up to, athletes, writers, actors, that talk about and have written about their overcoming difficulties, overcoming a challenge, like them exhibiting a growth mindset. I also think it can be really helpful to get kind of outsiders into a school. So either like people like yourself, grow your mindset kind of workshops, or you know, in the past in schools I've worked in, we've had like Team GB athletes come in, and they've talked about, I was sat where you were sat. You know, I was a 8-year-old boy and I had this dream to be an athlete, but I had, you know, fixed ideas about this. And there's a guy I write about in my book called Mike Mullin, who does workshops around growth mindset. And his whole story is that at school he had a completely fixed mindset. He thought he was good at some things, bad at others. And it was only when he got a BMX and realized that every time he made a mistake on his BMX, he'd learn something new. And it was literally learning the BMX that developed his growth mindset. And he went on to be world champion. And so I think that, yeah, those can be really useful, getting outsiders in that model it as well. So those are my 5 things: is read about it, implement on a small scale first, train other teachers and parents, do workshops for them, model it yourself, and then get role models, get outsiders in that also
demonstrate it as well.
Yeah, and share their story with children.
Oh, they're great tips, super tips for somebody to get started. Now, like we said at the beginning, you are in class one day a week, but very, very busy the other times of the week. So if people wanted to get in touch with you, Adrian, what's the best place, or what's the best thing for us to do if we want to get in touch?
So I'm on Twitter at Adrian Bethune. My website is teachappy with 1h.co.uk. I'm on LinkedIn. So there's lots of different ways you can get in touch. Always happy to respond to tweets and emails.
You've got you've got your Wellbeing in the Primary Classroom book, which is out now. And then you mentioned off air that you've got another one coming out soon.
Yeah, Little Guide to Teacher Wellbeing and Self-Care. It's not out till October.
But something for us to definitely look out for.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you today. Thank you very much for giving up your time and knowing how incredibly busy you are. But good luck with the book. I will be definitely on the reserve list for that one. I hope to speak to you again soon.
Cool. Thanks, Gemma. Thanks for having me.
Take care.